All right. Here we go, back again with another episode in this mini series. Today, we're going to be discussing Reece James. If you guys have been following, I know a few people have been messaging and following this particular series, and they're really enjoying this. Players, the youth players' performances and evaluating them. It just allows us to elaborate a lot more than just tweeting 250 characters where sometimes we're not able to say what we really want to say. So here's the opportunity to have a rational discussion about their performance and hopefully look into their expectations for next season. But before we start, I want to welcome second time around Micele. How you doing, my man?
I'm doing good, Miz. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure.
Brilliant, man, brilliant. And first time in my channel, it's lovely Elizabeth. You guys would have seen her all over the timeline. She's just recently come out with a really good article about, I think, women and how they get treated in social media. Please give it a good read. It's a fantastic read. And Elizabeth, welcome to the other side of the coin.
Thanks so much, Miss, for having me.
Brilliant. Okay, let's get this ball rolling. So, as we said before we went live, the way I want to talk about Reece James is just like all the other players that we've talked about so far this season, the youth players specifically in this series, is I want to talk in stages of their season. So, first of all, Reece James this season, I wasn't one of those big followers that really followed him last season in Wigan. And yes, I saw clips. Look, like everyone else in social media and football Twitter, they would have seen clips of Reece James playing for Wigan, and he looked really lively. He was, I believe, he was their player of the season as well. Is that right? Am I right? Yes.
Yeah.
And he looked dynamic from the right back. He played a little bit in the midfield area as well. Right at the end of the season, there were some cracking goals he scored. He just looked like the kind of a right back that we need for the future. We all know about Ashley Cole in the left back, and he sort of gave us a bit of a reminder that he could be the Ashley Cole of the right back for Chelsea for years and years to come. So then, of course, obviously the new season started, and just before the new season started, we all found out that he was injured and he wasn't going to feature for a little while. So I want to go to Micele first up. How much did you know about Reece James before the season started? Did you get the opportunity to see a little bit of him? And when you found out that he was injured, and we're going to see Azpilicueta a lot more in the beginning, how was your reaction to all of that?
Okay. Well, firstly, I haven't been like a massive admirer of his for many years. I do remember seeing a few of his games that was broadcasted during the 17-18 season, like the Youth Champions League final and stuff like that. And I guess when I really took notice was when, because Hudson-Odoi had a stellar season. And when Reece James beat him to Academy Player of the Season, I was like, damn, okay, this guy must be some talent, because it takes some talent to beat Hudson-Odoi that season. And then obviously he did then go to Wigan, and in South Africa we don't have the broadcasting rights to the championship. Right. So like you, I just saw whatever clips made it to Twitter, like that long range goal or good tackles, anything like that. And after seeing all of that kind of stuff and seeing how the players developed, I was obviously really excited to see him come back, because although Azpilicueta probably has been the best one-on-one defender in the last 5 years of the Premier League, going forward, he has kind of suffered in recent years. So I was really keen just to have like a powerhouse at right back who can just bomb forward, come back and defend. So, I was really excited to see how he had battled it out with Azpilicueta and how Azpilicueta could actually help him. Because, I think Reece James' only negative is he's not really amazing defensively. And, who else is there better to teach him than Azpilicueta?
Absolutely, spot on. So, how was your feeling when you knew that he was injured and you'd have to wait for him? Were you a little bit bummed about it, or were you like, I'll wait for him?
Oh no, definitely. Yeah, I was bummed because like I said, we saw in Maurizio Sarri's season, we saw Azpilicueta's capabilities and his limits. And going forward was definitely one of those limits. I mean, the 2 seasons prior, in the 16-17 season with Antonio Conte, he was feeding balls in from that right centre-back position in the back three. And in the 17-18 season, he obviously found Alvaro Morata quite a few times. But in the 18-19 season under Maurizio Sarri, he didn't really offer anything going forward. I mean, his crosses were kind of thoughtless. They're always hitting the first man. So having someone in that's probably one of the best crosses in the Premier League already was obviously just going to be major for us. So him getting injured was obviously pretty bumming, really.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Elizabeth, now the first Premier League game starts and we see Azpilicueta playing and we get punished 4-0. And I remember I did a thread off the back of that and I saw the common theme was a lot of the attack was coming from the Azpilicueta side. I know it's the first game, maybe they were a bit rusty, the players were a bit rusty, but I was at that point. I was like, man, I really want to see Reece James straight away because Azpilicueta looked like he was aging and whatnot. I know it was early in the season. Obviously, we'll get to the later parts of the season where Azpilicueta was actually one of the better players. But in the initial parts, you could see the first, I think, 2-3 games where Azpilicueta was getting caught out. The pace of the game seemed like a bit too much for him. How did you feel during those moments and you knew there was a beast waiting in the background like Reece James?
Right. I mean, it's hard because you just want this player to play. You have a player in Aspie that's the team captain that you don't see getting displaced from the team easily. And he's been one of our longest serving players. And he's one of the players who I really admire most in Chelsea because of just his pure dedication to the team. So it's really sad to see his decline, and you kind of feel at least I felt really bad for him, seeing him get caught out and feeling like, well, we really do need Reece James to come in and see what he's all about, really.
Yeah.
Because we can't keep getting caught out in defense like that, because we would see a lot of teams just attacking our right-hand side, their left-hand side, because they knew that was our weaker area and they could more or less get easily past Azpilicueta.
No, spot on. And, it was tough times, but we knew that obviously, Reece was injured, so we had to wait. Now, in regards to the getting into that sort of middle section of the season, obviously he was injured, and then slowly, I think it was about the November mark where, he started getting a few minutes off the bench. We finally heard that he's back on track. His fitness is back. He's been playing some games in the youth level as well. And then he started getting some minutes. And then finally, Elizabeth, we get the opportunity. I remember his first start, Champions League against Lille. I think he was playing as a wing back, perhaps, probably not as a out-and-out right back. I think he was in a back five. When you saw him start and he was in the team sheet, how did you feel?
I was just like so excited because obviously, like you guys, I haven't been able to see championship games either because of the rights, and I tried to find things where I can. So I was really excited to see a full game of football with Reece James play. And then I remember just being so impressed with how well he is going forward and the types of crosses that he puts into the box. And they're different types of crosses too, and they're difficult to defend, which is, and it's just developing that chemistry with the other attacking players, have them overlap on the crosses or go into them. But we see like a very good chemistry starting already, and we had seen that in that game.
No, absolutely well said. Micele, how do you feel? I know his crosses looked really good, right? And when he was bombing forward, he looked electric for us. And we'll get to the defensive side a bit later on about his flaws and whatnot, which you touched on. But moving forward, as he was going up, it almost felt like the other Chelsea players, especially Tammy or even our wingers, probably didn't expect how good of a crosser he is. Like it felt like there was some juicy crosses that were coming in, but some of these players were always late in getting into the back of these crosses. They were inches away from hitting it. Yes, Tammy, I think, scored one here and there with the header from Reece's cross, but how was your reaction that how can you not know this player trains with you 24/7? You should know that he's a good crosser. How did you feel that some of these crosses were just not getting converted?
It's extremely frustrating, especially when you take into account that they probably played at a youth level sometime along the way. And obviously they do train with each other. But I think I can kind of understand why Tammy is maybe a bit like apprehensive to go for the ball sometimes. Because Reece James's crosses, like Elizabeth touched on, are just so hard to defend against that you kind of expect the first man to be able to block it or put it out, but it just goes straight under him or around him, behind him. So sometimes it is difficult to anticipate that the ball is actually going to reach you. But I guess a more experienced striker who's a bit more focused knows that, you can't just fall asleep in the box regardless of the situation.
Fair point, fair point. Elizabeth, now to you, off the back of those fantastic crosses, obviously the whole fan base thought, okay, here we go. He's going to get a prolonged time now. He's just going to keep playing our games after games. But Frank, what we've seen this season, and this is what I've loved about Frank, is he's been very astute about how to use the players. He knows that they're young, and there's no, he's not going to just throw them out there game after game after game. He just wants to ease them into it, give them quality time here and there. And of course, obviously, we saw Spilicueta back again. But then there was a match against Ajax where we played with Alonso and Spilicueta, and then at halftime, when things just went pear-shaped, Lampard changed things around, took Alonso off, put Spilicueta on the left, brought back Reece James. How did you feel at halftime, seeing that beast coming on? We were behind. Did you feel there could be something different now? We could be on the front foot, with Reece James bombing forward on the right side.
Well, I think it was massive props to Lampard for making that change, because it takes guts to take a player off at halftime that isn't performing well at a defender, which is really rare, and making that swap. I think that we all know the potential that Reece James has, and I was really hoping that he would be the game changer that we needed, and we saw that going forward he was getting into good areas and putting better balls into the box, which and he's better defensively as Alonso as well. Well, most people are, but I think that he just brought that extra energy and fight. We looked really slow in the first half, and then in that second half, he really brought that spark and pace that we were missing.
Yeah. How did you feel when I think it was an equalizer goal, wasn't it? The 4-4.
Yeah,
I remember
it was.
How did you feel?
Freaking out. I was freaking out. I have this
Tell me you celebrated. Show me how you celebrated.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure you jumped up and down.
I have a really bad habit of screaming really loud whenever we score a goal, and my husband will be like, "What happened?" And then he'll see on the television that we scored. So I was freaking out, but I try not to be too loud because I don't want to scare him or anything. But I just couldn't believe that we had come from 4-1 to equalize, and that it was Reece James. I was like, yes, this is Reece. I'm so proud of him. He finally got his goal that he deserved.
Fair point, man. And now, Micele, look, we've been talking about the defensive flaws. Obviously, we've had the highs. He had a really good start. He scored that equalizer as well, which was an epic equalizer for us. But then he started playing a few games, and we were going through that tumultuous period where we'd win one, lose one, draw one, win one, lose one. You know what I mean? And it was a tough period during that sort of December, January sort of time. And there was one game I remember. I think it was West Ham where this Declan Rice. I hate him so much. Sorry, I don't hate him. It's just I don't want him for Chelsea. But anyway, he made a move, and I think he put a ball through for Creswell. Creswell then did Reece James completely. And I remember we've got a group chat. And I remember, Micele, you were quite vocal. You're like, "Oh man, that's on Reece. He can't do that," because he was easily beaten. How did you feel at that point? Because we all know we've been backing Reece James, and we still back him. But did you feel at that point this kid's got a bit to go? We need to just calm down a little bit.
I'm actually glad you mentioned the West Ham game because I was, I guess, lucky enough, you could say, to actually go to that game.
Oh, wow.
I guess you could say so because that was one of our worst performances of the season. So it was great to go, but it wasn't great to see what happened that game. And I'm glad that you did mention that his mistake led to that goal that Cresswell scored. And my overall feeling was actually that sometimes when you watch players play live, you realize just how good they really are. And for me, after watching Reece James play live, I was like, oh, holy shit, we've got a serious player on our hands. He's almost like a cheat code. Like, there's times where I'm like, okay, he's going to lose the ball. He just does a little Cruyff turn, and he sends a attacker flying. And he can pin balls. Like, I mean, obviously, he's going to make some defensive errors, because like you said, he's literally a kid. So what do you expect? But I think he definitely more than makes up for it in what he offers in attack and in the transition between defense and attack. So, yeah, my memories of that game are somewhat bittersweet. But, yeah, I actually left that game with much more respect for Reece James than when I went in to it with.
Brilliant. Elizabeth, how did you feel from that point? I think he had that mistake, and then obviously after that, I believe he had another injury. Then he came back again, and he showed that on and off sort of mistakes in the defensive area here and there. Yes, as Micele said, he at times with the ball, he looked so good. You know, the way he would just breeze past the player, the way first touch, feint, you know, he would just easily move away. But sometimes I felt like in the defensive phase where, you know, it just didn't click. And I know he's young, I get it, especially against Bayern Munich. But against Bayern Munich, I guess we all looked so below par. We just got absolutely eaten by Alphonso Davies and Thiago Alcantara and whoever else they had, Gnabry and Lewandowski. So how did you feel that, you know, when you see Reece and he's been touted as one of our very premier right backs for the future, when he came against some of these teams, especially Bayern Munich, how did you feel that, you know, the gap between the very best and where we are?
Yeah, so I think the Bayern Munich game was really eye-opening for me because we saw Alphonso Davies kind of breezing past on that left side. And it really made me more aware of, like, Reece is very good, but there are still areas that he can improve, and that is normal because he's a teenager and he's still learning. And with all youth players, you're going to have up games and you're going to have down games. And I don't think that Reece is the type of player to get bogged down about having a bad performance. I think he'll look at it and say, okay, I can really learn from this player. I can learn from the mistakes that I made and what they did and what I can do in the future. So it's to be expected. It's obviously never great when you don't have when you have a bad performance, but I think that I'm not surprised. You know, like he's one of our best talents, but we have to be understanding as fans that every player, no matter who you are, is going to have a bad game. But youth especially can yo-yo a little bit. But I think as Micele said, that we can see that he's very strong in the attacking phase, and defensively he just has a little bit more to improve. But I did look at some stats, and for example, aerial duels, he is in the 70th percentile and outranks Wan-Bissaka and Trent Alexander-Arnold. So I think
that's one on them. Yeah, we're gonna retweet that one. Don't worry.
So I think that Reece is still learning, but he's definitely a great all-around player. And we just need to be patient because he's definitely going to be one for 10 years at least that we're going to have at Chelsea.
No, spot on. Micele, we always talk about Reece James's crossing ability, but we saw a lot more than just crossing this season. I think people sort of shortchange him a little bit just by saying he's just a crosser. I've personally seen him where he underlaps. Sometimes he allows, you know, where the connection between him and Callum Hudson-Odoi. There was a game where it was Callum Hudson-Odoi, him, and I think it might have been Kante maybe on the right. Those three had a really good chemistry going on the right side. And there were times where Reece was underlapping, allowing Callum Hudson-Odoi to hit the byline. And he'd whip in crosses from the underlap position, or he'd have a shot from that position. His passes were clinical as well. Do you think he's just more than a crosser? There's a lot more than him that fans need to understand as well.
Oh, he's way more than just a crosser. I mean, his crosses are phenomenal, and I'd struggle to see anyone who's really much better than him in the Premier League, besides maybe Alexander-Arnold or James Ward-Prowse. So I mean, obviously that's his standout factor, but I mean you can't rule out how good he is on the ball, how physically domineering he is. I mean, we've seen against Brighton how he was winning headers against people who are like 6'4", 6'5". He just knocks them to the floor like it's nobody's
It was a
business.
broken arm. He gave someone a broken arm, right, on that game?
I think it was his former teammate when he was on loan at Derby or something. Because I know that they had some relationship and he just completely dropped him like it was nothing. So yeah, you can't just pinpoint him as a crosser just because that's his best aspect. I mean, he's so much more than just a crosser, and we've seen that, like what he adds to the team. Like I said, in the transition phase from defense to offense and everything in between, really.
No, spot on. Just to finish off this first segment, first to Elizabeth. Overall, with the injury sort of outlook that he had as well, how did you feel Reece's performance was this season?
I thought that it was really good. I think, given the fact that it's his first season in the Premier League, that he's coming back from injury, and I really could not tell that he was injured, like how we've sometimes seen with injured players that it takes them a couple of games to get back into the swing of things. I thought that he really hit the ground running. And I think in the future, we're going to see more people getting on the end of his crosses. And if we look at his expected assists, it's actually really, really high. So he is doing his job. So I would give him a solid, like, 8 out of 10.
Wow, 8 out of 10. That's pretty good. That's decent. That's generous as well, I'd say. I would have probably given him a 7, but I see your Chelsea feelings coming out, so that's all right. Micele, what do you reckon, man? You think you'd agree with an 8, or how was your overall assessment for Reece this season?
I think, like you, I probably would have gone with a 7, just because, I mean, obviously, if we saw more of him, it would easily be an 8. But just because we've seen such limited game time and minutes of him, I think it'd be kind of unfair just to give him an 8, even though he's been, like, when he's on the field, he's our most creative outlet.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think a 7 is probably the best judgment you could give him. So, yeah, I'd agree with you there.
That's fair.
Look, I think 7 for a first-time Premier League season is very decent, and the limited time that he's had is, I think that's fantastic, and he can build on that, and he definitely will build on that. He looks like a player that is so determined. He's like any other academy players that we have, just look so determined. They're so hungry to do well. So, it's fantastic to see that. All right, let's move on to the next segment of this whole topic of Reece James evaluation. We've had a good discussion about his performance this season. Now let's talk about the fans' expectation of him next season. I really want to hear what you guys have to say about him. First of all, with Micele, the word generational gets thrown around a lot. To be honest, to a point where I don't even know what that means anymore. I thought I did know what it meant, but now it just gets thrown around so much. I don't know what it truly means. So when that word sort of gets tagged with Reece James and our expectation for him for the future, how do you sort of encapsulate all of that? Like, what is generational for you, and is Reece James generational for you?
Well, I guess generational, I mean, it's not something that's a fact, really. So it's an opinion. So I guess it differs from person to person. Yeah. And my definition would be a player that, like, I mean, he's generational. So he sets the standard for that entire generation. He is the benchmark for an entire generation. And he kind of leaves his mark on the game and on that position. And I'm quite strict when I throw around the word generational. So I don't think any of our youth prospects really are generational yet, because, I mean, they're youth prospects.
It's too early. It's too early.
You can't put that name on someone who's barely gotten out of puberty. So, I think if anyone is generational, like out of our entire academy, it would probably be Reece James, just because he literally, I mean, for 2 reasons. Number one, he's just ridiculously built. Like, I mean, how often do you get a right back who's that size and as equally fast and agile? That's why I said he's like a cheat code. He's built like a brick, but he still moves like he's, I don't even know, like a Hudson-Odoi built player. And secondly, he's kind of like a mixture of the perfect right back. I mean, so many people have said this. And I think Elizabeth is also mentioning the same stats graphic that I saw, where he literally trumps Wan-Bissaka in every offensive phase. and he trumps Trent Alexander-Arnold in every defensive phase. So he's literally the perfect right back, theoretically. So we'll see if he can actually live up to it. And I think he will. Reece James is probably the last player you want to doubt.
Yeah, look, you know what? It's so true. I'd probably have to agree with you in terms of generation. I'll probably also throw in Billy Gilmore as well. Like, I've been a massive fan since I saw Billy. Like, honestly, I dream about this kid, man. I can't wait till football comes back, and I want to see this player play, because a lot of players have been saying, a lot of fans have been saying, you know, Billy just needs a bit more time, needs a bit more time. But for me, I feel like from what I've already seen from the 2 matches, I would have to throw him into that Reece James category as well, along with this generational talk. I know it's still a bit too early, but yeah, you were going to say?
I mean, he's somehow younger than I am, so I'm definitely keeping the generational tag quite far from him for a decent amount of time at least. But I think he definitely has the potential, especially if you look at who he's idolized. I mean, the people he idolized were pretty much generational. Andrea Pirlo, Andrea Iniesta, Cesc Fabregas. So, I mean, if he can reach any of their heights, I'd be very, very happy with that.
No, absolutely. Elizabeth, coming back to Reece James, next season, I mean, I've tweeted this a few times. You might have seen my thread. I know we want to focus on him being a right back. I get that, and that should be his forte, his premier position. But as Micele was saying, he's so built. Like, I've not seen a right back in that build. Like, the last one that kind of reminds me is probably Cafu, but even Cafu is more leaner. Like, Cafu for me was leaner. He was tall, but was leaner. But Reece James is so built, and I've done a thread which was him playing in the defensive midfield role. Like, I feel like he's so dominating with that physique. He could easily just be box to box. What's your thoughts? Would you ever entertain something like that next season, or you'd pencil him down 100% right back?
For me, I feel that we already have such an overwhelming amount of midfielders that I wouldn't consider putting Reece in that position, just because we already have such a conundrum on our hands with the likes of Billy Gilmore, Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Mount, maybe Barkley if you're still considering him.
Hey, I'm considering him. He's my man.
He did have a good couple of games, but and then we looked at the right backs that we have in the only
cheeky Micele.
I know, so cheeky. And the only other person that you could put in right back really is Azpilicueta, and we've seen that Reece James has just been so much more effective than Azpilicueta. I wouldn't want to lose what we've gained with Reece James, and also if we put him in that defensive midfield role, we're really going to miss out kind of like the bread and butter of Reece James, which is his attacking prowess and his crossing and his ability to carry the ball and pass it into the final third. So I would personally keep him at right back.
No, fair point. Next season, though, Elizabeth, obviously, just like this season, we've seen Azpilicueta be predominantly in the game, and Reece has been sort of the on and off. Like, Frank's been quite measured in how he's allowed Reece to grow. Do you feel next season we're going to see a lot more than what we saw Reece this season? Obviously, barring that there's no injuries. Or do you feel if Azpilicueta is still here, how do we disregard the captain of Chelsea? Or do you think he may lose the captaincy next season?
That's a really interesting question. I think that Reece has done enough this season to solidify his starting spot at right back. So I don't think that we're necessarily going to see Azpilicueta at right back anymore. But it does beg the question, where do you put Azpilicueta? And I think it really depends on whether or not we buy a left back. Because if we don't buy left back, I could see him easily starting, but I think that's probably one of our priority positions. And I think we're going to start to see the phasing out of Azpilicueta and having him play some of those lighter games, maybe an FA Cup game or the Carabao Cup games. I don't think that Azpilicueta is going to be such an in and out starter as he.
It almost hurts to talk about Azpilicueta that way, doesn't it?
I know. He's one of my favorite players. Like he's been one of my favorite players for years. So it really does hurt, but I think that he's very mature and that he really like guides people and coaches them. So I can see him stating like John Terry kind of like I understand that my time is coming to an end, so I want to do everything I can to help the younger players and to still keep you know the team morale high. I think that he probably still will be our captain next year, but it will be more on the side, like how we had with Terry. He was still the captain, but he wasn't playing
Yeah.
as much.
Micele, do you feel the same as what Elizabeth's saying, or do you feel Aspie could be the type of player that may say, "Hey, I'm not done yet. Like, I'm not just going to move away. Like, I feel I'm still good enough at this level to continue on." And that kid, Reece James, better wait his time. Do you feel that might be the case?
I mean, Aspilicueta is definitely not one to stand down from a challenge or anything like that. He's probably the most hardworking player besides Kante that we've had over the past 7 years or however long he's been here. So I'd imagine that he's obviously not just going to like roll over and die and just let Reece James have right back. He's definitely going to push him all like to the max of his abilities. And I think that's the best for everyone involved, really. I mean, Reece James is learning from one of the best one-on-one defenders in probably Premier League history. I don't know if I'd go that far. And I mean, yeah, it's the best outcome for everyone. Like Elizabeth said, I think he probably will take a background leadership role like John Terry in the 16-17 season and Cahill in the 18-19 season. Hopefully he'll be less toxic than Cahill in the 18-19 season. And
I'm going to send that message to Cahill.
Give him a message just from this. So, yeah, I'd agree with that.
Do you think, I suppose, with Aspilicueta, as you said, he's not going to be someone who's just easily going to be, just deny a challenge, I suppose. But we talk about competition, and I feel this is perfect for Reece, as you said. Aspilicueta is someone who, Reece can learn so much from in defensive phase, which I feel Reece just lacks a little bit there, and he can have someone like Aspilicueta as a reference. Do you feel when we talk about the word competition, which gets thrown around for Tammy so much, do you feel this is the kind of competition that we need for a youngster to build to the next level?
I think it's pretty close to perfect. I mean, obviously, Aspilicueta is not a world-class fullback, but like you said, he'll push Reece James in the points where Reece James is weakest. So in the defensive phase, he's probably still better than Reece James. So he can still definitely push him out. If we need to secure a win, then Aspilicueta probably starts over Reece James. Like if we're trying to secure a Champions League second leg win or whatever, then if you want to go defensive, you probably still play Aspilicueta. So I think it's pretty perfect. I mean, you don't want to bring in someone who's younger than Aspilicueta and will demand game time. You really want someone who has really seen it all, done it all, and who can just impart the knowledge that they have accumulated throughout their playing years onto someone like a Reece James.
No, spot on. Elizabeth, next season, what are some of the things that you really want to see from Reece that you saw this season and you want to see it being developed more next season? What are some of the things that sort of come to your mind about Reece James that you want to see get to the next level?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, we've already touched on this, but he does need to develop a bit more of a defensive sense and improve in that area. So I want to see him making right now, if we look at the number of tackles and interceptions he makes, it is a bit low for being a defender, and the ground duels that he wins. So I do want to see him improving in that area. And then the second thing I would say is just improving his chemistry with his teammates so that they can, develop this sense of where they are without even really knowing it, how we've kind of seen with Fabregas and Costa, that they're just able to pick each other out. So I think that I would like him to develop that so that we can see more players getting on the end of his crosses, because they are going to be absolutely like fatal to the defense.
No, spot on. Micele, final question before we wrap this up. Next season, one of the things that we've seen with Reece James this season is there's been times where he's been quite vocal in the in the field, like where we needed someone to sort of scream a little bit and really wake things up. He was one of those players that was sort of demanding a lot more in defense, whether it be set pieces or in defensive phase. Do you see that part of his game developing a lot more next season, which obviously ultimately could help out the team?
I'll just quickly touch on the previous question. I think
Mm.
anything more than expecting Reece James to improve defensively is seriously just kind of like nitpicking. I mean, he's already one of the best right backs in the league, if not in Europe potentially, just if you analyze his game. So I think literally anything more than saying he should improve defensively is kind of nitpicking. Because I mean, in the attacking phase, he can't do any more. How many times have we seen him put the ball on the plate for someone like Tammy, and he just fluffs
I
it?
think there was a game where I think he had about maybe
I think it was like
6 or 7
Palace at
crosses.
home or something.
Yeah, there was like 6 or 7 crosses, and literally all should have been goals.
Yeah, so in that sense, there's really nothing more he can do. It's up to the other players to just take up on the chances. And to touch on
That's
what you
fair.
said about him being a more vocal leader, especially, I think we did touch on this earlier, especially with Aspilicueta potentially being phased out to the bench, we have a serious gap of leadership on the field. And I do believe that Reece James is the kind of person to kind of stand up to that, and he will just kind of like step up to the role and take on the challenge. Because we all know he's kind of like a quiet guy behind the scenes, but as we have seen on the field and maybe in some of Alex Goldberg's podcasts, he's really not afraid to shout at anyone. He doesn't care how old you are, how much experience you have. He's not afraid to call a spade and call you out for your mistakes. So I think if we'll see a massive leap in leadership from anyone on the field, it'll definitely be from Reece James.
Brilliant, brilliant. Final words before we wrap things up, Elizabeth. What you feel confident about this player next season? Just sort of sum up the whole thing for me in few sentences.
Yeah, I definitely do, and I think that we already see a well-developed player and a well-rounded player, and we're going to see him develop into that further and really kick off and become this world-class player, in my opinion, that he has the potential to be.
Micele, world-class potential as well.
Definitely. Let me just maybe end it off with a little bit of a hot take or unpopular opinion.
All right.
I think if he can stay fit and play pretty much every game he's physically capable of playing, he will prove to rival fans and Chelsea fans alike that he's the best right back in the Premier League. Easily.
That is going to be tweeted from the other side of the coin. That clip over and over and over again until
Sweet.
Every Premier League team has that as their pin tweet.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable. Right. Before we go, firstly, I want to say thank you so much to you guys. You know what? It's been a stupendous episode for me. I loved it. Even though you guys talk less amount than all my other guests, but you guys talk so nicely. You guys keep it really, really simple to the point, and it's so lovely to have the conversation. I get a lot more questions out to you guys as well. So thank you heaps for coming into my channel. I'm sure I'm going to see you guys again. Micele, what are you up to in the next few days? And tell us your whereabouts, whatever you want to plug. This is your time.
Cool. Well, everyone in South Africa is still in lockdown for probably another 2 to 3 weeks. So at the moment, I'm not doing anything too amazing, really. I'm still just sorting out my student visas, finishing up some work for my college. And yeah, really nothing much. I still kind of have to just watch Netflix and read books for entertainment. And I guess if there's anything I really want to plug, I'm not really going to plug my own Twitter page because I'm not really too active. But just go follow SW6 Daily on Twitter. We've got fantastic articles, podcasts, videos, edits, pretty much everything. And yeah, check out the podcast page as well, SW6 Daily Podcast.
100%. I'll have all that in the description as well. So guys, look out for that. It's a really, really good publication. I kid you not. Honestly, it is. Elizabeth, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a really pleasure to have you in my channel. We've been talking about it for so long. Finally got you here. Final words from you. Tell me what you're up to. You've been doing a lot of stuff. I see you almost every time in the timeline, whether it be a video, article, opinions, edits, this, that. You've got the lot.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Miz. I've been looking forward to coming on and chatting with you in person, so to speak. And yeah, I've been trying to keep it busy and try to put out content where I can and opinions. Like you mentioned in the beginning, I just had an article that I put out on my experience as a woman in football Twitter that was like really difficult to share, but I'm glad that I put it out there. So it'd be amazing if everybody could give that a read. And also, obviously, I'm also part of SW6 Daily, so check out our page.
Yeah, I'll have the link for that article in this in the description as well, so for everyone to have a read of that. It's a worthwhile read. I think last I don't know, Micele was there last season, so he may know about my stuff. Elizabeth, you weren't probably that prominent last season. There was so much things I went through last season, and I was copying insults left, right, and center just because I've backed the manager, which I always do, and it was tumultuous. It was really tough because. Like I was one of those guys who's very, very opinionated, and sometimes I guess my opinions just hit the other fans in the wrong way, and times got really tough. Like Micele will tell you, like I still get called an Arsenal fan, and he jokes around with it as well. So and people hacking my Facebook accounts and whatnot, trying to find dirt on me and whatnot. So yeah, people went very, very deep with my family and insults and so on. So my religion as well, my background. So yeah, like look, this platform can get really tough, but I think when you sort of circle yourself around with the likes of people like Micele, Matisse, and all the other people that you talk to, Dami, they'll make sure that you're always kept safe. And this is the important thing. Whenever things get tough, just go to the people that you trust the most. They'll comfort you. They'll make you feel safe. You don't need to worry about anything else after that. So I remember, like, it hasn't been that long ago, maybe 3-4 months ago, I was about to quit football Twitter. And Micele actually, he reached out to me and he pretty much told me how it is. Like, he just said, "Miz, you're going nowhere." So and I thank him for that, because that I needed that. Because I just needed someone to snap me out of it, because I was just going through a whole heap of abuse after abuse after abuse. But anyway, look, don't want to end the episode in a sour note, but I'll have all of those descriptions and information in all those information in the description. So guys, have a look into these people, and until next time, another player into this series. Hopefully, I'm pretty sure it might be Billy Gilmore next up, or Kalamantan Odoy. It'll be very interesting, two interesting players to talk about. So yeah, until next time, see ya.